As many as 50 Minnesota school children may have AIDS. A state health official says 35 to 50 children are carrying the AIDS virus based on blood tests among hemophiliac children. But he says none of those children are ill with the disease, and the chances of them passing on the virus is very small. The fear of AIDS has spread to the streets. Some men are now being warned to avoid sex with prostitutes because the streetwalkers may have the disease. Nancy Gerber reports.
They walk the streets, they sell their services. Some say it may cost those who pay more than the money. It may cost them their lives. The victims, not just the buyers, but the sellers as well.
No one that I know has ever gotten AIDS.
Are you afraid about it?
It worries me, but I'm not going to panic.
But as researchers look for an AIDS cure, the public is panicking from the AIDS scare.
People make a hasty and unwarranted conclusion that we have demonstrated another route of transmission, and that neither the CDC nor the New York City Department of Health would agree that that has been demonstrated.
What has been demonstrated, according to the Centers for Disease Control, is that prostitutes appear a possible link to connect high-risk bisexual males with otherwise low-risk heterosexual men. Presence of the AIDS virus in prostitutes is reported higher than the national average. In Miami, 10 of 25 streetwalkers tested did carry the virus. In Seattle, 5 of 92. But some contend those numbers are simply not enough proof.
As far as a demonstrated risk for AIDS, that hasn't been seen. Prostitutes in New York City have not appeared to be at increased risk.
This is the west side of Manhattan. Here you can find streetwalkers on just about every street corner. Most of the prostitutes we spoke with say, sure, they're afraid too, but that the AIDS fear is getting out of hand, that they're being singled out, and it's not fair.
The whole business with herpes didn't stop anybody, and you can see how they go from one thing to the other. As far as I'm concerned, I think they're just trying to... They're saying that maybe to get the girls off the street.
While the AIDS scare spreads onto the street, the greatest fear for all remains the mystery.
Ann Burford, the former head of the Environmental Protection Agency, has been arrested for public intoxication. Her husband, a senior official in the Interior Department, was booked for drunk driving late last night, and Mrs. Burford was later arrested after what's described as abusive behavior. She was in the lobby of the jail where her husband was being held. Both were released on public recognizance and face separate court dates. Some driver education courses are being dropped by high schools because of budget cuts, and some insurance experts say that's fine because they think driver education increases accidents. More from Tom Mintier.
We will have these on the side of the car. Won't you be able to...
These students, or more likely their parents, are paying for the chance to learn to drive a car. A fee of $50 a semester per student funds the program. Driver's education in public schools has been on the decline for the past 5 years. A national study by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety kicked off that decline. That study suggested that driver's ed can be dangerous because it helps teenagers get their licenses before they're ready. The rethinking of the driver education program is not being done just by insurance agents. It's also being done by local school boards who are taking a look at cost effectiveness. Each hour a student attends class earns local school districts reimbursement from the state. But many states don't give credit for driver's education. The state of Georgia has offered driver's ed since 1949, but the state has never paid for it. A new educational reform program, Quality Basic Education, or QBE, may be encouraging local systems to drop driver's ed classes.
And I can name 5 or 6 systems that QBE, zero funding, are out the window.
Actually, the number of school districts in Georgia that are dumping driver's education is closer to 30. Gene McDuffie teaches driver's education. He says learning to drive is as valuable as math or history.
Because driver education is a life skill. It is a survival course. It is very basic to life itself. We know that we don't solve all the problems, but we think we're a step in the right direction.
Right now, many are questioning which is the right direction. The issue of driver's education divides along the lines between parents who want lower insurance rates and school administrators who want sounder budgets.
The FAA has moved a step closer toward what experts say will increase chances of surviving a plane crash. As Frank Seltzer reports, some new lights have been approved to help passengers find their way out of a plane in an emergency.
June 1983, an Air Canada plane fills with smoke and makes an emergency landing in Cincinnati. 46 people on board, but half died when overcome by the smoke. The experts say that was a classic example of how people die needlessly in plane fires, and that's important because fires result in many crashes. The people who survived the initial crash rush to get out, but as the smoke in the cabin thickens, it often obscures the exits. The Airline Passengers Association says while companies have made plane engines and controls safer over the past 30 years, it still is not enough.
Despite the industry's best efforts, accidents still occur. And at this point, we have to consider the environment in which we find ourselves after a survivable accident, and finally, how do we get out of this environment?
The FAA has taken all that to heart, putting out a rule which mandates new safety lights to be put in all airliners by November '86. A Texas company won the first FAA approval to make those special lights and now is showing how well they work. A plane cabin fills with smoke to simulate an emergency, and the Plumley lights, as they're called, kick on. The people trying the new system say it works well. Inventor George Plumley says that's because he worked to find a light to penetrate that smoke.
The bulb itself, in what we call visibility, is probably 500 times brighter than anything that's ever been before.
Other companies now are trying to develop their own lighting systems, but Plumley says it took 10 years of research for him to perfect the lighting escape system and get the FAA blessing. Now he hopes it won't be much longer before his Plumley lights are showing passengers the way and giving them a better chance at surviving plane crashes.
Stay tuned. The news continues.
Pardon me, boy, is that the Chattanooga Juju?
Sessions presents Memory Lane, a rare and unique 4-record collection featuring 44 of the greatest hits of the 1940s and 50s, like the 12th Street Rags and Eddie Fisher.
Oh, my papa.
Relive your fondest memories of the good old days by enjoying some of the greatest and most memorable hits ever recorded, like
Irene, good night. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
the Cordettes and the Andrews Sisters.
He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.
All songs are the original hits performed by the original artists and are not available in any store at any price. You must be completely satisfied or your money back.
Tra-la-la, tee-da-dee-dee, there's peace and goodwill.
Les Paul and Mary Ford.
Vaya con Dios, my darling.
Also the Ames Brothers.
R-A-G-G-M-O-P-P, ragtop.
The wheel of
K-Star.
fortune.
You got to accent.
Johnny Mercer.
You wait to positive on the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. Or would you like to swing on a star?
Bing Crosby.
Sincerely.
The McGuire Sisters and Art Mooney. Memory Lane. Giant 4-record collection or 2 8-track or cassette tapes, only $14.98. Here's how to order.
To order, phone toll free. 1-800-257-1333. That's 1-800-257-1333. To avoid the COD charges, send check or money order for $14.98 plus $2 for shipping and handling to Memory Lane, P.O. Box 8660, Atlanta, Georgia. That's Memory Lane, P.O. Box 8660, Atlanta, Georgia.
It's 49 minutes past the hour. Time for Headline Sports.
This is Tom Steiner, Headline Sports. Boxing history made Saturday night in Las Vegas. In the International Boxing Federation's heavyweight title bout, Michael Spinks denied Larry Holmes a spot beside Rocky Marciano in the history books with a shocking 15-round unanimous decision. Holmes, who came in unbeaten, was attempting to equal Marciano's 49-0 mark for heavyweight excellence. Despite being outweighed by more than 20 pounds, the former light heavyweight champ, Spinks, stood toe-to-toe with Holmes and was the aggressor. It wasn't very pretty, but it was good enough for Spinks' 28th straight win. The undefeated Spinks, who forced Holmes into retirement, becomes the first light heavyweight to become king of the heavyweight hill. College football, after a mediocre 500 campaign last year, Michigan is off to a fast start. The 22nd-ranked Wolverines 2-0 after whipping the favored 15th-ranked South Carolina Gamecocks 34-3. Michigan used its ferocious defense to shut down the nation's third-best offensive attack. Bo Schembechler's Hungry Wolves have not given up a touchdown so far this year. Another Big Ten team also improved to 2-0. In Boulder, the 5th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes ripped Colorado 36-13 as quarterback Jim Corsados connected on 3 touchdown passes. On the scoreboard, number 3 Iowa overpowered Northern Illinois 48-20. Baylor shocked 4th-ranked Southern California 20-13. 6th-ranked Florida State stopped Memphis State 19-10. Number 9 LSU, a victor over Colorado State 17-3 the final. And 10th-ranked Brigham Young, the defending national champs, had some problems but downed Temple 26-24. On to the baseball pennant races. It was Dwight Gooden's day at Shea Stadium. The Mets right-hander won his 22nd of the year. At the plate, he went 3 for 4, including his first Major League homer, a 3-run shot to left field, helping the Mets rip the Pirates 12-1. New York still a full 2 games back in the East since the first-place Cardinals beat the Expos 7-6. The West-sitting Dodgers blasted the Giants 11-2. Bill Madlock had 3 hits, drove in 1, and scored 3 times. Second-place Cincinnati fell 5.5 back, losing in Houston 9-5. American League, the East-sitting Toronto Blue Jays needed 14 innings to nip the Brewers 2-1. Meanwhile, New York beat Baltimore 5-2 to remain 6.5 games back. The Royals, leaders in the West, nipped the Twins 6-5-10. California remained in a first-place tie by clobbering Cleveland 12-3. Tom Steiner, Headline Sports.
I'm Donna Hoffman. Here's who's news. Mariel Hemingway is hitting the talk show circuit to promote her new movie with Peter O'Toole. In Creator, Hemingway plays a lab assistant who helps an eccentric scientist bring his dead wife back to life. So what is it that brings together a lab assistant and a much older scientist?
They're together not having nothing to do with their age. It's because they're very much alike in their wackiness, in the way they think.
I'm Donna Hoffman, Headline News.
In the headlines, Mexico's worst fears are coming alive tonight. The official death toll from 2 devastating earthquakes now stands at 3,000, but U.S. Ambassador John Gavin estimates that figure will reach 10,000. Tropical storm Gloria whirled towards the Leeward Islands, and forecasters say it could reach hurricane strength by morning. And the stage is set and ready for the Farm Aid concert tomorrow, featuring country, rock, blues, and bluegrass. The 14-hour benefit is expected to draw nearly 80,000 people. With the headlines, I'm Lori Butterfield.
More news after this.
This is where it all begins, the diagram in the team's playbook. But here's where it really comes together, in a packed stadium on a Sunday afternoon, the game on the line. That, my friend, is the real thing. And when it comes to sports coverage, the real thing for me is right here, the Sporting News. Call this toll-free number to get in on a special half-price offer. The Sporting News delivered straight to your mailbox every week at a hefty saving. The Sporting News delivers hard-hitting, close-up action. Stats you just won't find in your local news or anywhere else. On-the-scene coverage of pro and college football, basketball, baseball, hockey, boxing, and more. 52 weeks a year.
Call toll-free 1-800-533-1400. Save 1/2 off the regular subscription rate. You pay in 3 easy installments of only $4.96 each. Call now 1-800-533-1400.
In dollars and cents, like stress, alcoholism is one of the job-related problems executives have to deal with. Deborah Marchini reports some of the most neglected victims of the disease are at the top of the career ladder.
Alcoholism. To the American Medical Association, it's a disease. To society, a stigma. And to corporations, it's a growing problem. About 1 in 14 executives becomes alcoholic, about the same as in the general population. But alcoholism seems to hit harder at high-level executives because they wait longer before seeking treatment. Nicholas Pace runs a clinic for alcoholic and drug-dependent executives.
You'll see an alcoholic executive later in his disease because he has a secret weapon, namely his secretary, who, without realizing it many times, protects him from himself.
Not only secretaries, but subordinates routinely cover up for an alcoholic boss because they're afraid to confront him. And superiors often ignore the problem because they don't know what else to do. The consequences are often tragic.
I could feel myself slowly slipping, or getting deeper and deeper, if you will, into this loss of control, almost 24 hours a day needing a drink just to write my name. And there was also a fear of turning any place for help because of my job.
A recent study by the Alcoholism Council of Greater New York says fear of discovery, even by lower-ranking employees, will keep an executive from using traditional employee assistance programs staffed by people junior to himself. Moving employee assistance up a few rungs in the corporate structure can lessen an executive's reluctance. So can referrals to private clinics. But no program will help unless the executive is prompted to seek treatment, usually by a career crisis. So in aiding the alcoholic executive, the best advice may be the most difficult to follow.
Stop hovering for this person. Let it happen. The sooner he gets the pressure, the sooner he's going to be willing to face the problem and do something about it.
You're thinking of going to see the latest show or movie, but the critics pan it. Do you ignore them? Lauren Sidney reports.
Reviews. Most of us read them, but how many of us are really influenced by them?
I think I have a mind of my own, but there's certain critics that I tend to go with.
Well, I read the critics, but it also has a lot to do with who's in the show. I would go see something because of a particular actor or actress, even if it had a bad review.
I prefer singing and then making my own decision about it. If it's a bad one, then I've lost out. But hopefully I will have made the right decision.
Apparently, millions of people feel they made the right decision by seeing Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, although critics panned it. Vincent Canby of the New York Times called it the most barren comedy he's seen in years, maybe ever.
I meant to do that.
Pee-wee's director, Tim Burton, feels that reviews and revenues do not necessarily go hand in hand.
I mean, I think it's proven that movies can have the worst reviews of all time and make lots of money.
Perhaps the only place that reviews are more feared than Hollywood is Broadway. Singing in the Rain stood ready to enter Broadway history as one of the most expensive one-night flops ever. It opened to 12 unfavorable reviews, but the critics were wrong. Despite the unkind words of some of Broadway's biggest, Singing in the Rain's weekly gross has risen every week but one since the opening. The star of Singing in the Rain, Don Correa, is somewhat critical of the critics.
I don't dislike Frank Rich or Clive Barnes or anybody. They have their opinion. I wish they were able to say, in my opinion, this is the way we saw the show. The fact is, the night they saw the show, everyone was standing, they were on their feet.
There is actually only one critic who decides what will succeed and what will fail. That critic is you.
I'm Susan Lasovich. Around the world in 30 minutes. This is Headline News.
America's team, the Atlanta Braves, battle the San Diego Padres. Live and in stereo at 4 p.m. Eastern on the Super Station tomorrow.
Charles, what would you recommend?
Something delicious, light, and low in cholesterol. Do you realize the lower the cholesterol in your body, the lower your chance of heart disease?
Delicious, Charles. Thanks for the tip.
Well, if there's one thing I know, it's a good tip.
The American Heart Association. We're fighting for your life. From Turner Broadcasting System, this is Headline News.
Now, the home gym that treats your body to a 9-station workout. Trim Track. Durable, no-nonsense construction. Yet Trim Track can be yours on this special TV offer for just $39.95. It's a rowing machine. Perfect exercise for flattening the tummy. And you'll love quality touches like the padded seat and smooth as silk track action. The padded footlock is perfect for sit-ups. Gives you a trim, tight waistline. Hop on your knees for arm curls. Does miracles for arms and neck and chin. Trim Track. It's the fast track to the slender, younger figure you've been dreaming of. Just $39.95. Have your credit card ready and call now. Here's how to order.
To order your Trim Track, call toll-free 1-800-257-1333 or send $39.95 plus $5 for shipping and handling to Trim Track, P.O. Box 8660, Atlanta, Georgia 30306.
Headline News, I'm Susan Lasovich. The search for survivors goes on in Mexico City. Rescue teams this morning are battling exhaustion as they try and pry victims out of the rubble. At least 2,000 people are believed to be pinned under debris and possibly dead. And the government says at least another 2,000 people have died in the two earthquakes. But U.S. Ambassador John Gavin says at least 10,000 people may have died in the tragedy. The government is trying to quickly bury many of the dead to avoid the possibility of an epidemic. But health authorities say they're running out of coffins. We have two reports.
It's a sound that's filling Mexico City's streets. Thousands of volunteers are picking their way through tons of shattered concrete, glass, and steel in a round-the-clock effort to reach survivors.
We hope. We must hope. See?
But many of the people who lived through the twin quakes have lost that hope. With emotions strained by the crisis, some people aren't willing to live with the risk of more danger, so thousands of people are leaving Mexico City. Traffic jams caused by outbound motorists are delaying ambulances and emergency vehicles from reaching their destinations. Those who stay behind face a city struggling to provide even basic services for its citizens. Parks, bus stops, even sidewalks are homes for countless families. The silence caused by down telephone lines worries people in the U.S. with friends and loved ones south of the border.
I have more information.
For many, the sound of the shortwave radio is their only link with Mexico. But that's not enough to calm Laura Lorenzo, who worries about her parents.
My mother was fine before the second earthquake. I don't know what's happened since then. I don't know what's happened to my father. I assume they're all right.
Not all the news from the search teams is bad. Picking through the remains of Central Hospital's maternity ward, workers found 58 babies who lived through the disaster. It's that kind of discovery that keeps exhausted workers digging, hoping to find more survivors. But thousands of people are still unaccounted for, with time running out. Brad Johnson, Headline News.
As the disastrous proportions of the twin earthquake became clearer Saturday, the United States directed help south. At Mexico's request, a plane load of demolition experts and dogs trained to sniff out survivors in the rubble rushed to Mexico City. Firefighting helicopters, gas masks for rescue workers, and small generators were dispatched. By midday, U.S. Ambassador to Mexico John Gavin was estimating the two earthquakes had killed at least 10,000. State Department officials in Washington did not second that estimate, but neither did they question it.
Well, I think the dimensions of this catastrophe are becoming more and more apparent.
The Mexican embassy in Washington confirmed 3,000 known dead. As the dimensions became more apparent to the Mexican government, the list of requests to the United States grew. There were requests for a field hospital, field kitchens, field jackets, water containers, jacks and winches, power saws to cut through metal and concrete. Peter McPherson, head of the Agency for International Development, said work on answering that new call for help began as soon as it was heard.
If we haven't gone a long way in 24 hours, I'd be very unhappy.
McPherson and Assistant Secretary of State Elliott Abrams said individual Americans who want to help should send cash to such recognized relief agencies as the Red Cross. They should not, said Abrams, rush to Mexico themselves.
It is not useful because it adds to the burden that the Mexicans have, which is already very large.
President Reagan announced in his weekly radio address that Mrs. Reagan will visit Mexico on Monday.
To aid in that effort, Nancy will go to Mexico within the next few days to express the support of the American people for our courageous friends in Mexico and to explore how we can lend a hand in this ordeal.
A spokeswoman for the First Lady was asked whether Mrs. Reagan's plan to visit Mexico so soon, with her requirements for security and other travel arrangements, might not divert attention from rescue and recovery efforts that probably still will be going on. That White House spokeswoman said, "We'll do our best not to add to their problems."
This just in. Police in India say a bomb exploded early this morning near the railroad station of the capital, killing 3 people. A spokesman at the police control room says the explosion occurred in the city's Old Delhi section, but they have no further details. There is no claim of responsibility yet. More rioting, death, and burials. Funerals were held across South Africa yesterday for victims of racial unrest there. One 54-year-old black man was burned to death when his house was destroyed by fire. Most of the other dead were shot by police in various black townships. In one area, authorities imposed restrictions for the funerals, including bans on banners and political speeches. Thanksgiving Day in the Philippines became a day of protest. More than 80,000 anti-government demonstrators marched and chanted through streets in several cities yesterday. Police say 3 people were wounded, 20 arrested. Officially known as Thanksgiving Day, it was the 13th anniversary of martial law under President Ferdinand Marcos. Those opposed to Marcos's regime called the day a national day of sorrow. The United States has called a meeting today with the finance minister and central bankers of major industrialized nations. The meeting, to take place in New York, will focus on the international economy. Treasury Secretary James Baker and Fed Chairman Paul Volcker will meet with their counterparts from Britain, France, Japan, and West Germany. A new heavyweight boxing champ, Michael Spinks, pulled off a shocking upset of Larry Holmes in a 15-round unanimous decision in Las Vegas last night. Gary Miller reports.
It was supposed to be a safe 5-1 bet that Larry Holmes would win his 49th heavyweight fight without a loss and equal Rocky Marciano's record. But the 21-pound advantage for the champion in weight wasn't enough to offset Spinks' 6-year age advantage as Holmes looked sluggish. Michael Spinks, on the other hand, was animated at the rather vocal urging of his corner.
They kept shouting at me, and I kept wondering what they were shouting at me for. I hadn't done nothing to them. So I said, what you shouting at me for? You know, calm down. Shoot. I didn't know what was going on. I was doing the best I said, I'm doing the best I can, man.
Spinks' efforts proved to be just enough. He scored the decisive points in the 15th and final round, recording